I grew up in a very disorganized home where like the doors inside my house had holes in them, and our house there was like some rooms that looked like a hoarder lived there, just piles and piles of stuff to the roof. House demolished in many respects. Like the back of the garden was 6 foot high. It was a mess. So I've grown up with mess, and I'm therefore still pretty messy today. And it's something I've always wanted to defeat, but sometimes I tell myself, well, it was hardwired into me when I was a kid, and it is just who I am. And a lot of people go around saying that. They've just kind of identified with and accepted a certain bad habit is part of who they are.
Well, I will say that some of the most brilliant people I know had terribly messy offices.
Yeah.
And they were very internally organized people. It's kind of interesting. They were like a laser beam in their ability to kind of sort through mess. They didn't see the mess. In fact, my postdoc advisor, who also sadly passed away, an incredible human by the name of Ben Barris, used to walk into his office and there'd just be piles of stuff everywhere. And I'd say, Ben, I think we should clean your office. And he'd say, don't touch anything, because if you move anything, I won't know where it is. And I said, how could you possibly know where anything is right now? And he said, I know where everything is. And so I think some people also, by growing up in or being in that environment, also maintain an uncanny ability to find things. Whereas I'm the sort of person where I can't do any work until everything is cleared away. And so I see myself as on the weaker side of this ability. But to your question, I think stories are very powerful and very dangerous. Stories are the way that humans organize knowledge by and large, right? We don't tend to organize things into lists. We have these narratives that we call stories because from a young age, we learn things not just by hearing them and seeing them, but they are compartmentalized into narratives that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Sometimes they have a kind of a crescendo and then a relaxation. Just think about a childhood song of learning like the ABCs. They don't teach you the ABCs, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, right? They don't do that. What do? They give you a song, which is a story. Musicians will understand this inherently. Again, I'm not one, but when I started researching neuroscience of music and the brain, came to understand, so it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? The change in the inflections as one does the alphabet as a young kid is the story of the alphabet. Now, people might say, okay, what is he talking about? What's happening here is you create variation in terms of batching of ideas so that something has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if you think, okay, I grew up in this house and it was really messy and now I have too much mess. And in order to undo that, there's this kind of like hardwired, right, dangerous words, hardwired neural circuitry in my brain that I would have to work really, really hard to undo, and I'd have to be scared into being a cleaner person or I'm a tidier person, whatever it is. That's very dangerous because there's a beginning to that, a middle to that, and an end to that, and it has immense meaning as a consequence. One of the most powerful things is to understand that neuroplasticity really involves taking an existing story and dismantling some component of it. What could the component be? Well, there's all this stuff like the Byron Katie work, which says, you take something that you believe as true and you say, okay, like I'm an untidy person, and then you counter it. How do I know that? Well, okay, I have this experience. Okay, that's the story. And then you start running counter narratives. You say, I'm actually a tidy person. And then people say, well, this is silly. You're just lying to yourself, right? Or they say, is it always true that you're a messy person? You start challenging this story from different sides. Now, I believe, because I'm a neuroscientist, I'm not a psychologist or in the self-help world, that the brilliance, the kind of unconscious genius of that approach is actually that what one is doing is you're starting to create a new story. You're starting to kind of infuse different questions into the existing neural network. Now, the brain loves